Baby, boy, you drive me crazy. Nah, hey yo, I don't know why you said that, and I don't know why I was just singing D Sav, and then that part comes up. I don't, hey, nah, I'm not gonna lie, hey yo, hey fucking yo, but we're not gonna talk about that, okay? As you can see, we got Jimmy High Roll on the screen. We're about to react to We Done with the 90s, okay? Because a lot of niggas, I'm not gonna lie, 14 minutes and 47. When the fuck did I watch 14 minutes and 57 seconds of this video? I said 14 minutes and 47 seconds of this video. I don't. YouTube be bugging sometimes. I'm not gonna lie, but what's good, y'all? We gonna react to "We Done with the 90s" by Jimmy High Roller because these past few weeks, the trend "We Done with the 80s" and "We Done with the 90s" has been trending on Twitter or X now. It's called X now. So Twitter trending on IG, and it's also been trending on YouTube as well. You know what I'm saying? You got a lot of content creators talking about it. Now, me personally, we might be done with the 80s, but the 90s we not done with the 90s. But the 80s we might be done with because there was some niggas in the 80s that if they play today, they're gonna be ass. They're gonna be like the bottom of the bench. I'm not gonna lie. But we gonna let Jimmy High Roller explain it to us, and then I'm gonna give you guys my full analysis at the end, okay? Based on what he said and based on my opinions, because I got my own opinions, you know what I'm saying? Because niggas do be wildin', so but let's get to the video.
Brothers, we are in the midst of a civil war. The age-old debate of past versus present has reached critical mass, and sides have been taken. A revolution is taking place, and we're losing good men. Old school versus new school. Back in the day versus modern day. A story as old as time itself. I tried to ignore this bloodbath, but just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, it all got so much worse.
We done with the 90s.
Film of
Are we
NBA
done with
games
the
from
90s?
the 80s and 90s coming to light, showing that the good old days were in fact not that good. This whole time, the punishing defensive legend
nigga.
was actually just a bunch of plumbers camping out in
What the fuck? Yo, just that nigga
This
did a
whole
whole
time, the
flip.
punishing
Yo, that
defensive
nigga almost broke his back. Yo, that is not funny, bro. That nigga almost lost his
days were,
career,
in
bro.
fact, not that good. This whole time, the punishing
God
defensive
damn.
legend was actually just a bunch of plumbers camping out in the paint looking for someone to hack. Shots clanking off the backboard, players running around aimlessly, wreaking havoc. And worst of all, Michael Jeffrey Jordan, the supposed greatest basketball player of all time, didn't even have a left hand.
All right, now whoever created this narrative is stupid. I'm not gonna lie, because if you creating this narrative, the main reason why motherfuckers is creating this narrative is so they can prove that LeBron James is better because Michael Jordan didn't have a left hand. You know, you realize you dumbass niggas don't realize that you saying that Michael Jordan doesn't have a left hand makes him better than LeBron because nigga won 6 championships, got 5 MVPs, 6 Finals MVPs without having a goddamn left hand. Whereas LeBron got to use 2 hands. You know how dumb you niggas be sounding? Like, come on, bro. Like, come on. Before you pick narratives to, you know what I'm saying, try to roll with, you know what I'm saying, you got to think about it all the way. You know what I'm saying? Before you go out and say
What is
shit.
going on? Have we been lied to about basketball in the 80s and 90s? Are we
Nigga just
really
dribbled off
done
his
with
foot.
that era of hoops? Or are we being deceived by lowlights, misinformation, and cherry-picked clips? Well, I think I've got an answer. And some of y'all ain't gonna like it.
Let me make sure I'm in frame real quick. Hold up.
Today's video is sponsored by SeatGeek. The NBA season is in full swing, the MLB season is just around the corner, your favorite artists are on tour, and y'all are gonna need some tickets. Now you guys have used my promo code.
All right, Jimmy, yeah, I know. Sponsor SeatGeek, Jimmy 10. We got it. We got it, Jimmy. We gotta watch the video. No disrespect. You gotta get your bread. Jimmy 10, we get it.
Testimonies from past and present players talking about their experience in the league and how it's changed over the years. And none of those things managed to do what these 5 simple words have done in just a week.
Done with the
clips
90s.
Came rolling in of players from that era dribbling off their feet, throwing up air balls, and putting together moves that you might see at your local high school's JV game. So, for whatever it's worth, here is my long-winded take on this whole discussion.
All right, Jimmy. Let's see what you guys say, man. You the basketball savant, so your word counts.
I want to begin by saying what this discourse has taught me more than anything else is that NBA fans today never actually took the time to go back and watch games of the past.
I'm not one of them niggas. I've actually went back and, bro, when I was a little ass nigga, man, I could say when I was around like 13, 14, bro, when the NBA season was off and I was watching TV, they used to have I don't know if they still do now, they probably do. They would play hardwood classics on NBA TV at like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I would sit there and watch them. Like, they would show a lot of Jordan highlights. I remember they showed they showed a game with they showed the Indiana Pacers versus Chicago Bulls. They showed Drazen Petrovic versus Michael Jordan. They showed a lot of games against Larry Bird with Larry Bird going up against Magic Johnson. So these games, you can watch these games. They're more available on YouTube now. But they was on TV too. They were literally on television. Niggas just don't be tuned in and don't look for it. You know what I'm saying? I just happened to come across it one day because they happened to play hardwood classics at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, fuck it, I want to watch some basketball. The basketball season's over. The Golden State Warriors just won the championship. I'm like, bro, I want to watch some basketball. So boom, you know what I'm saying, the hardwood classics. But like he's saying, bro, like the majority of these niggas that be doing these debates, they don't even be looking at it. They don't even really be, not even that they don't do their research. They don't even go out their way to even look at the era that they're making fun of, bro. They don't. They just looking at narratives. They're looking at small clips and they're looking at what other people saying instead of using their own discretion and going out there and looking for themselves. Like, come on, my nigga.
I have been harping on this for years, begging for fans of the game, whether you are new or have been watching for years, to just go back and watch full games. Not highlights, not clips, full-length games of eras from the past. And after seeing this discussion devolve into
before Jimmy High Roller says what he's about to say, the 1980s, the reason why I say we might be done with the 1980s is because the 1980s was ass. I'm not gonna lie. The 1980s basketball was not fun to watch unless it was Larry Bird and the Celtics or Magic Johnson and the Lakers. Even the Detroit Pistons at times weren't really that fun to watch unless Isaiah Thomas was going for like 30. You know what I'm saying? They were playing aggressive ass defense. Their offense was very, very lackluster. Motherfuckers didn't have really a bag because motherfuckers couldn't do Euro steps. Motherfuckers couldn't do a tween cross. Motherfuckers couldn't do a hesitation without them calling a travel or a discontinuation. So motherfuckers was very limited back then, so it led to very boring basketball. I'm not gonna lie. Magic Johnson got away with a lot of shit, but Magic Johnson was doing, but he was getting called for shit too. I'm not gonna lie. Larry Bird, he just had the chop. Larry Bird just had the blicky on him. You know what I'm saying? He didn't really have a dribble package, but he didn't need to. He had the blickster. So.
Today, it is clear to me that most people never take the time. I'm seeing countless fans have this sort of awakening as they're watching films of these old games as if the footage was buried or lost, and it's finally being unearthed for the world to see. It's been right here on YouTube for the past 15 years.
So that's why I might be saying we done with the 80s. The 80s was ass. There's only a few niggas in the 80s that you can take and put them in this era and they'll be okay.
I guess that
like a small few.
Now I'd like to think I'm somewhere in the middle on this whole discussion. I have said on multiple occasions that players in today's NBA are simply more skilled than players of the past, which has resulted in bigger stat lines and higher point totals than ever before. It's not the defense that has gotten worse, it's the offense that has gotten better. You know, that whole spiel. But I also have an appreciation for the greats that came before and how incredible some players of past eras were. In fact, I almost feel like I'm hallucinating seeing this 90s basketball slander campaign unfold in front of my eyes. It feels like everyone's perception on the age-old debate changed literally overnight. I know that's not the case, but after seeing all of this play out, it sure feels that way. But today, I'm not just going to show you some cherry-picked clips or unhinge this narrative even further. I'm going to show you real film, real data, and proof of how we might actually be done with the 80s and 90s. And, of course, if Michael Jordan really had no left hand. Spoiler, he did.
I'm not even entertaining that narrative at all. I'm not. The game has evolved a lot.
Now I have been an advocate for the modern players are better than players of the past movement for quite some time now. In fact, as crazy as it is for younger fans to say Michael Jordan was trash, it's just as absurd for older fans to say the game hasn't.
Michael Jordan would be Jalen Brown in today's NBA is crazy. The NBA was better in the 80s and 90s. That's crazy, okay? Because the NBA is way better now. But Michael Jordan would not be Jaylen Brown today at all, my nigga. Y'all niggas, the same niggas that are saying this are the same niggas that watch Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant's game is literally Michael Jordan's the same. He literally plays just like Michael Jordan, except Michael Jordan's more efficient. Like, come on, my nigga. You would literally be doing Kobe shit in our era. And probably take way more threes because he be encouraged to do so. And this nigga saying that the 80s and 90s was better back then than now. This nigga's tripping. Niggas back then were not getting paid $200 million just to fucking play basketball, my nigga. And on top of that, niggas, the bags that niggas have now, bro, the amount of skill that is needed to be a rotational piece in a basketball team is crazy. Okay? It's crazy. So you can't, like, come on, my nigga.
And gotten better over the last
Marcin
30
Gortat was incredible in the pick and roll with the Wizards. He's not wrong.
Because that's all this debate really is.
He's not
Young
wrong.
fans versus old
He's not
fans.
wrong.
Or
I watched
fans
it
that
firsthand.
watched this versus fans
First
that are watching this.
First NBA game I went to,
Objectively,
Washington
players
Wizards
today
versus
are
the
much
Brooklyn
better
Nets.
than they were in the 80s and even the 90s. Specifically, the lower end of the talent pool in the NBA today is vastly better than it was in the past. I think great players would be great in any era, but with the spacing, the shot making, the emphasis on offense as opposed to defense has made the depth across the NBA today just way ahead of where it was in the 80s and the 90s.
Not facts.
There was, without exaggeration, guys in the NBA throughout the 80s and 90s that were on NBA rosters just to accumulate fouls and sit in the paint and be big. Some of these players were offensively inept, and that was okay because their role was not to create offense.
Kurt Rambis,
NBA,
who remembers Kurt Rambis? I don't remember Kurt Rambis. Only reason I know Kurt Rambis is because of 2K14. Shout out 2K14. Kurt Rambis. I did my research on Kurt Rambis though. He's literally just there to foul. He could, and in 2K, every time I put him in the rotation in 2K, he literally doesn't do shit. He's just there. He's literally just there. He doesn't do anything. You know what I'm saying? The only value he probably brings is just IQ, basketball IQ. That's about it. If you put him on the floor, he's not applying that IQ at all. He sucks.
Offense reigns supreme. There is no room.
Put Kurt Rambis in the NBA today. You can because he's not making it. Like, come on, my nigga.
Now you
like,
could
come on, bro.
and should go back and watch film of games, not highlights from this.
That's
era
why I say
and
the
see
80s.
just how limited
the
the
80s we might be done
these
with, bro.
players were.
The 80s
the shot
sucked.
making for the most part was limited.
If it wasn't the
to
Celtics,
jumpers,
Lakers, or Detroit
slashers
Pistons,
coming downhill for
or
layups,
sometimes the Philadelphia 76ers, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't fun to watch.
and big men trying to muscle their way to a bucket down low in the midst of what appears to be a wrestling match. Catch a player off guard with the double team, and they immediately pick up their dribble. Simple things like guards turning their back to the basket 20 feet out
They couldn't
instead
without
of
it being a
creating space
travel
off
or
the dribble.
this.
Even players looking down at the ball while trying to
at
get
Doc.
out on a
Look
fast
at
break
Glenn
was very
Rivers.
common
Look at
in this
Glenn.
era. And these aren't lowlights or cherry-picked incidences.
Oh, what
This
kind
is
of
just
Scott?
what
You
the
not
game looked
Kareem,
like
my
35
nigga.
years ago. But even without film, nearly every metric suggests modern players are more capable.
Look at
of players in
airballed
the past.
again.
Free
Yeah, that's
throw
what I'm
percentage
saying.
was
The
worse.
80s is
Three-point
ass.
percentage was worse. Turnover percentage was higher. They used to shoot more free throws, but still ended up with far less points. Now, this is not to say that this era of hoops was trash. That's just disingenuous and flat out wrong. Best play.
I'm stuttering. I'll say it. The 80s was trash. Okay, there's only a few decent teams or a few teams that were actually contenders during that era. But besides the fact, the 80s were ass. Okay, it took other teams way longer to develop. It took them a way longer time to develop their fucking teams. You know what I'm saying? Because majority of these teams just came into the NBA. So, you know what I'm saying? The merger happened literally almost 10 years ago. Not even 10 years ago. Beginning of the 80s, it happened 4 years ago. So you got teams coming into the NBA. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be hard to adapt a little bit. But by the 90s, teams adapt. Teams realize, okay, we can do this, we can do that. We can rebuild this way, we can rebuild that way. We can put this guy with that guy. You know what I'm saying? Because teams like the Houston Rockets, teams like the Portland Trailblazers, teams like the San Antonio Spurs, teams like even the Dallas Mavericks, they came into the 80s. Teams like the Dallas Mavericks didn't develop. Even the Cavaliers, teams like those didn't develop until the 90s, like the early to mid 90s. You know what I'm saying? Skills, you know what I'm saying? Niggas were starting to get some more skill. You know what I'm saying? Niggas were starting to get away with doing a little bit more dribble moves and shit. Because it's starting to get a little bit more entertaining. That's when the team started becoming more, you know what I'm saying, solid. In the 80s, the only teams that were nice was the Lakers, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Detroit Pistons, and the Boston Celtics. Okay? Those are the only teams that were like contending for real. You know what I'm saying? Every other team was an outlier or had a slim chance. I'm sorry. It's just a simple fact. I'm sorry.
In the world at the time, it was just simply not as good as what it is today. But maybe there's another layer to this that needs to be factored in to really understand why these players were not as skilled as the players of today. Now, despite this being a very relevant topic for years, the idea of rule changes and how these changes have affected the game still remain a mystery to some. Players were a product of their era and the rules of their era. The first step to discovering greats of the past is to watch film of them play. The next step is to gather and understand the context of the film you are watching. When you see a 6'9" Magic Johnson go flying down the court with what looks like kind of a stiff dribble, you may think the man has no bag. But my friends, Magic Johnson did have a bag, but the rules in place at the time only allowed him to reach so far into it before—
just like I fucking said at the beginning. Yo, I'm not gonna lie, me and Jimmy, like, we clicked. I'm not gonna lie, we
got called for every violation in the rule book. Consider the fact that any move where your hand wasn't completely on top of the basketball was considered a carry.
Exactly.
No 0 steps.
It doesn't take, like, all you gotta do is just watch the fucking 80s games to realize this shit. Oh, that's all you gotta do. That's all you gotta do, fans. That's all you gotta do. Go on YouTube, look up fucking the Detroit Pistons versus the Philadelphia 76ers 1984. And then boom, you gonna see that these niggas was really limited on what the fuck they could do because these refs didn't know what the fuck they were looking at. They thought they was looking at witchcraft.
To create separation, no lunging into players to draw.
I'm saying, like, come on.
Here's a clip of Danny Ainge hitting Kevin McHale with a hezzy in the mid-80s. And the man thinks he just witnessed witchcraft.
But when practice sessions were completed, some of the most competitive competition began.
Niggas said double dribble. That's what I'm saying. Niggas never saw a hesitation before in their life, and then they see it. The refs see it, they think it's a fucking travel.
Carries doing moves that are very typical and allowed in 2024. 90% of the moves you see today, the very method most players generate their offense, would be called for some sort of violation 40 or 30 or even 20 years ago.
Nah, literally.
And this isn't just some cop-out or excuse as to why these players of the past weren't doing this stuff. The rule changes are real, documented pieces of NBA history. You can literally look them up. The game got looser, players grew up and shaped their game around these looser rules, and now they have free reign to let their basketball bag run wild.
Facts.
But that's kind of the point. Players of the past didn't grow up practicing 25-footers. They didn't work on a dozen moves to create separation. They played in offensive systems that focused on the team.
I'm not gonna lie, that shit didn't change. I'm not gonna lie, Michael Jordan is the blueprint for that, but that shit didn't change until Kobe Bryant came into the league, bro. Once niggas saw that Kobe Bryant was working on foot placements and footwork before even putting up a shot, that's when niggas realized, not even Kobe, even Hakeem Olajuwon too. Hakeem Olajuwon, once niggas realize, yo, if you have footwork and you know how to fake and you know how to get to your spots, you're gonna be unstoppable. Like, it's just like, and like he said, niggas back then weren't practicing that. There was only a few niggas doing that. Like Michael Jordan was doing it, Hakeem Olajuwon was doing it, and then later on Kobe was doing it. There was only a few players that were really practicing their footwork and shit like that.
Collective schemes and sets,
you know
that
what I'm saying?
resembled something closer to college basketball.
So he's 100% right.
Possessions were few and far in between, so they never developed an arsenal to counter these situations. The rules of the time limited their game, which resulted in them having a more limited skill set than players today. If Larry Bird grew up with a three-point line, he might have been the greatest long-range shooter ever, but he didn't. And as a result, he didn't shoot a lot of threes and he wasn't as efficient as the best shooters today. We can sit here and assume these players of the past.
That's why I say, like, nigga, when niggas say he's one of the greatest shooters of all time, I say I understand that, but most of his points came from the two. It's like, you could look that up and see that. You know what I'm saying? Most of his points came from long twos. You know what I'm saying? Occasionally he'll take like 3 or 4 threes in the game. If he's hot, he'll take like 5 at most, maybe 6, or hit 5 and 6. He'll probably take more, but he'll probably hit like 5, 6 threes. You know what I'm saying, on a good day. But you know what I'm saying, like he just like he's saying, he didn't practice with a 3-point line. He just had to play.
If they were playing under the same rules and conditions, but they didn't. And I don't think we should assume that. The fact is, they played in a different time, and they became a product of that time. But that's not to say the game was trash back then, or that the superstars of these eras couldn't compete in today's league.
Let me just rub his head. Nah, this nigga just disrespected this man.
Now, as time goes by, I think it's easy to
Look at
forget
Irving, man.
just how long ago.
Look at Irving, man. Look at Larry. Look at Larry
44
Legend,
years
man.
ago, if my math is correct, which is in fact a very long time ago. In 1985, Magic Johnson won an NBA title, Larry Bird won the league MVP, and Michael Jordan won Rookie of the Year. That was 39 years ago from today, which is the same exact amount of time that has passed from that 1985 season to the year the
Damn, so
NBA
niggas that were born in 1985 are 39 years old right now. Or 40 years old. God damn, bro. Nah, time really flies, man.
was founded
Time really
in
flies, man.
1946. Look at these clips. Do you think these players could compete with the likes of Bird, Magic, and Jordan? Let me answer that for you.
Hell no.
No. But take the best players of the 80s and 90s, and could they compete in today's league? Absolutely. Give these guys some
80s, no. 90s, yes. There's only a few, like I said earlier, there's only a few niggas in the 80s that you can take
Watching this
and put them in this
today
era
is
and they
the
might be
equivalent
aight.
of
But
watching this in the 80s.
there's a lot of niggas in the
and yet
80s
this
that you can't
product
put in
is
this
vastly
era.
closer to the
There's a
basketball we
lot.
see today than this product was to what fans were witnessing in the 80s. In fact, we can use different superstars as sort of a cross-generational measuring stick to see just how stiff the competition has been over the years. Larry and Magic played Michael, who played Kobe, who played LeBron, who has played the players of
playing
today.
the white
And
white
nowhere down this
niggas.
timeline was there any real jump or fall off in production or level of competition from one era to the next.
I'm not gonna lie, look at Luka Doncic, man. Look at the GOAT, man. I'm not gonna lie. If I see Luka Doncic, bro, I'm giving him an official nigga pass. I'm sorry. He's getting the nigga pass. He gets to say nigga once every day. Once a day. Once every 365 days. You know what I'm saying? And if he wants to renew it every year, he just has to keep averaging 35 points per game. You know what I'm saying? Because he's gonna get the nigga pass. Because he's just the GOAT. He's the greatest ever. He's the greatest.
Eras, and no one
He's the greatest white basketball player of all time. I said it. I don't care what nobody says.
Then why did players of the
I don't
90s
care.
have to wait for those guys to get old and retire to have a shot at winning? And if the 90s were so bad, then why did players of the 2000s not win until those guys retired? We don't need to assume that adjacent eras could compete with one another because we actually saw it. MJ struggled with some of the guys that came before him.
Facts.
Shaq struggled against Hakeem and Kobe struggled against MJ.
Facts.
LeBron struggled against guys like Duncan and Dirk. And
Facts.
players of today have struggled to get past some of the older players in the league who are a product of the previous era.
Facts.
Now, what we shouldn't do is jump 3 or 4 eras at a time, ignoring entire decades of evolution and saying the game back then was better or even as good as it is today. At a certain point, the knowledge and wisdom that comes from actually witnessing decades of NBA history, like some older fans have, becomes skewed and watered down by nostalgia and a generational bias. Superstars are superstars because their game transcends the era they played in, but they also played in an inferior league. These two ideas are not mutually exclusive. And although generational talents of the past would do just fine today, this same logic does not apply to the vast majority of the league throughout the 80s and 90s.
Facts. A vast majority of the league. A vast majority. Trash is crazy.
So if the 80s were inferior to today's league and the 90s were inferior as well, when did the NBA become not trash? Well, it depends on how you look at it. Ironically, I think there's a pretty clear distinction to the skill set of players before Michael Jordan hit his peak and after. For example, the early 90s and late 90s, although being in the same decade, were massively different in play style and skill set. Think for a second about the fact that Magic Johnson was still in his prime in the early 90s and Allen Iverson was entering his prime in the late 90s. In less than 10
Less than
years,
10 years, the
basketball
league changed
became
just
a
like that.
massively different game. By the
Damn.
late 90s, the players who grew up watching Jordan fly through the air and slice up defenses were in the league and were reshaping the role that
This is why I say the 90s is fire, because look at all these teams, man. Look at all these motherfucking you see Ray Allen on the Milwaukee Bucks. I forgot about Allen fucking Iverson, man. 76ers, they started becoming nice. All of these teams started really becoming nice once Jordan stopped fucking dominating all these goddamn teams. Even when Jordan was dominating these teams, these other teams that Jordan was going up against, it was not like it was a walk in the park for this nigga Jordan, especially in the Eastern Conference, bro. This nigga was going up against solid ass rosters. Solid rosters in the 90s. I'm not gonna sit here and say that the 80s is ass. I'm just saying that me personally, I might be done with the 80s, bro. Cause I can't think of a lot of niggas that were nice in the 80s. That's just me personally. I didn't grow up in the 80s, bro. I didn't, bro. The only teams that I think that are nice in the 80s, I already named them already. So you already know that. But I can't think of any other team that was like nice for real, bro. You know what I'm saying? I can't, bro. I'm sorry. I just can't do it.
Players played. Guys like Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, Stephon Marbury, Grant Hill, Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter.
Solid ass teams. Paul Pierce on the Celtics. The Celtics were ass though, but that's not Paul Pierce's fault. Vince Carter, like, come on.
Resembles what we see today.
Kevin Garnett, Jason Kidd, man.
And even early 90s.
And coming in the 90s, bro.
Fans might make the distinction of when the league really took a leap, not in competitiveness, but rather play style. You can go back
and you over here saying that this era is ass. How y'all niggas gonna sit here and say that we done with the 90s, bro? When all of this talent was playing in this era, you basically saying that all of these niggas that Jamie High Roller is showing right now, you basically saying that all of these niggas were ass. Or that they played in a subpar ass league. You basically calling Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Garnett, Allen Iverson, Stephon Marbury, Ray Allen, Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Akeem Olajuwon, Gary Payton, Sean. You calling all of these niggas ass, and they not ass. Reggie Miller, they not ass, bro. They not at all.
Watching an NBA game today. Or
Tracy McGrady, you saying these niggas suck?
In the late
How?
2010s, after Steph Curry redefined what makes a great championship caliber player, and the league adjusted to this new three-point heavy, perimeter-focused style of basketball. Similar to Jordan, the kids who watched what Steph was doing in the mid-2010s emulated that style of play, tailored their games to it, and are now in the league doing things that only Steph could do a decade ago. So, if we're done with the 80s and 90s, where can we look back and no longer apply this era tax on these players? I think most fans would agree that the turn of the century is where the modern era of hyper-skilled players began. You can say objectively that this era was not trash, and most players of this generation would do just fine in today's league. But if that is the case, then modern NBA fans are holding a ticking time bomb, and they might not even know it.
This nigga Victor, man, this nigga's a fucking issue, bro. This nigga Victor Wembanyama's gonna be he's gonna be one of the greatest big mans to ever touch basketball, bro.
When we are older and a new generation of NBA fans claim
every time I watch Victor Wembanyama, bro, I'm just like, wow, man. He's the first player that I watch. The last player that I felt like that was Luka Doncic. Victor Wembanyama is literally becoming one of those players where every time I watch him play basketball, I'm just like, wow, bro, this man he's not real. How is this man real? This nigga's not how the fuck are you 7'4", you that agile, you have a bag on you, you like a small little dribble package, and you can like shoot, and you can block shots, you can block anything. This nigga, he's a dynamo all around the floor at 7'4". I don't get how he's real.
Your favorite players,
and he's doing it every game. Every game.
As good as the players of the future. What will you have
when this nigga gets up to like 210, 220 pounds, it's gonna be over for the league.
But inevitably, there will be. And eventually, there will be many players who can shoot like him. His records will fall, his percentages won't look as good through the lens of 2040, and although his legacy will be cemented, his actual game will be put into question. And based on the arguments I'm hearing today on why past players were trash, we will have nothing to say that will change their minds. We know that Curry was the first to do what he's doing. He is a pioneer of the modern NBA. We have context to back up our claims.
Facts.
But if we aren't willing to hear older fans out today, what makes us think younger fans will hear us out in the future? Mark my words. There will be a day.
I'm not gonna lie, if I'm 30 years old and a nigga comes up to me and tells me that Steph Curry was ass, I'm gonna just tell him, bro, watch the games. Go watch the game where he drops. Oh shit! Go watch the game where he dropped 60. Go watch the game where he hit 12 threes in a game. Go watch the game where this motherfucker hit the goddamn the dagger on OKC, or he hit that shot. I don't know if it was a dagger or it was to go to overtime. Either way, he hit that motherfucker from the parking lot and with confidence and walked off. Like, come on, my nigga. Like, you can't just watch this nigga. All you gotta do is watch Steph Curry to realize that he's the greatest shooter of all time. It doesn't take a fucking brain surgeon to realize that.
In fact, it's already happening. Fans saying he has no bag. Younger players putting up bigger numbers than he ever did. Skill sets a bit deeper with games that look more polished. It's all fun and games now to crack jokes about past eras. But our day will come too. And it ain't gonna be pretty. But Giannis could only run and dunk. Your era was trash. Y'all had a dude who couldn't get 2 feet off the ground running the whole league. You can scramble to pull up clips and show the numbers, but their minds will already be made up. This is why I think it is so important to have genuine, thought-out discourse about the game if you're truly a fan of it. But to all of the older fans out there, you kinda started this whole thing. For years, we heard y'all badmouth modern players, saying the league is soft, players today...
let me read some of these. So many of the players in the 90s were likable as opposed to the floppers of today and the whining after every foul. I don't know about likable. Some of them niggas were going through some scandals. So we're not gonna talk. So this is NBA plays. This is NBA plays before, unlike today's English. NBA all softs and flopping is cotton candy. I don't know what the fuck he's saying. Best basketball ever played was in the 90s, hands down. Okay, that's your opinion. You're not saying nothing wrong. That's just your personal opinion. There was a time when basketball was competition game, not a circus like today. Back when real men played ball, the absolute pinnacle of our sport. Okay, buddy.
Couldn't compete back then. Back in my day, real men played the game. Y'all cannot be mad that some fans are done with the 80s and 90s when y'all never
2000s was fire. I'm not going to argue about the 2000s.
Sure,
nobody's arguing about the 2000s.
Fans never took the time to go back and watch the greats of the past. But let's be honest for a second. Older fans don't watch games today. They catch a stray clip on Facebook of LeBron flopping, and like an echo chamber of disgruntled old men, they just start firing away in the comments, agreeing with one another. Y'all asked for this. I've been watching the NBA since the mid-2000s.
They not wrong though. LeBron James is a flop. He be flopping OD. He's calmed down with it now because now they fucking fine you if you flop. But even then, you can't call him you can't call him soft. This nigga is been bulldozing through the league since he was 18. He's been a freight train since he was 18.
Iverson,
so
Shaq,
we can't say
Nash,
he's soft.
those were my guys.
You know what I'm saying?
But I
Pause.
can acknowledge those greats and say they were incredible while also acknowledging that version of the NBA as a whole was not as refined or as good as it is today. Now, will I be able to make that distinction in 20 years when some snot-nosed brat tells me my glorious king was trash? I'm not so sure.
Look at this nigga Jordan. Nigga laid the whole team. Did Michael Jordan really have no left?
No, it's time to once and for all take a real close look at this accusation that Michael Jordan did not have a left hand.
Fact that Jimmy really made a whole segment dedicated to this topic is crazy.
I was having a bad dream when I first saw this claim, but unfortunately, I was not. I feel like no one actually believes this.
Call him a left hand compilation.
Trolling. But in an effort to stop this nonsense from spreading any further, I have no choice but to take these accusations seriously. So I selected 8 random games ranging from Michael Jordan's rookie season.
No, you know what I blame? I blame the nigga that made the "We Done with the 80s" clips, bro. Because he was the nigga, he was the main nigga saying that Jordan didn't have a left. Like, bro, like, come on, bro. Now you spreading false narratives, bro, just to make you feel like, I get that he was joking, he was doing comedy, like, we get it. But now nigga was spreading false narratives, bro. Nigga was over here saying he has no left. He has no left. He always going right. He does the same move. Like, come on, bro. Like, I saw the videos. Like, I blame that nigga because now we got niggas going around really thinking that Jordan had no left. Like, come on, my nigga.
To the mid-90s. And
come on, bro.
Play gathered all of his possessions throughout these games, charted when he went to his right, when he went to his left, and what those possessions
This nigga really did.
And here is what I found. Jordan made a move with his left
hand. You was
hand
that mad that you really went and watched every game and calculated every shot he took with his left or when he went left?
Or his right hand 227 times.
Nah, you're fiending, Jimmy, you're fiending. Now you're fiending. I mean, you be having all the time. This is how you get paid, but still, like, you're fiending.
His left hand.
You're
Of the
doing the most.
121 right-handed moves, he passed up or got fouled on 54 of them, so I didn't bother charting those. 65 of these moves resulted in a shot, in which he made 63% of them and only turned the ball over 2 times. Now, moves that he made with his left hand resulted in a pass or him getting fouled 45 times, while 55 of these left-handed moves ended up in a shot, in which he made 51% and 6 moves resulted in a turnover. So based on this data, Jordan was definitely more comfortable going right, especially near the rim and even on mid-range jumpers.
I mean, it's common sense. If you're a righty, bro, not even the righty. If you're a righty,
dribble. But overall,
your best shot is going to be either on the right side or like on the left wing.
And although it was his weaker hand, he was still above
because the left wing is like a straight shot. It's because I feel with that. Because I shoot with my left, so every time I'm on the right wing, I feel like a straight shot.
Is a relatively small sample size. So I looked into it further and found this. A detailed breakdown of Michael Jordan's shot chart and shot tendencies in 3 seasons from 1990 to 1992.
Yo, who made this?
126 games and over 4,800 minutes in total, tracking exactly what Michael did on the court for 3 seasons. And here's what the data shows. In total, Michael made 1,074 moves in isolation, going either to his right or to his left hand. 48% of those moves were with his right hand, and 52% of those moves were with his left hand. When going to the right, Michael shot 61.7% on 410 shots with 15 turnovers, resulting in 1.38 points per possession. When going to his left, Michael shot 61.3% on 421 shots with 36 turnovers, resulting in 1.31 points per possession. So even with a much larger sample size, Michael not only had a left hand, he went to it just as often as he went to his right and was nearly as proficient with his left as he was with his right.
Michael Jeffrey Jordan, my nigga, is MJJ.
Like, Michael made on average 4.4 left-handed isolation moves.
This is nothing new. Like he's the GOAT for a reason.
Possessions that resulted in 1.31 points per possession. Now, here are some prolific scores from this season and their overall tendencies and efficiency in isolation. Keep in mind, this data includes both right-handed and left-handed moves from these players.
He post up.
And now here is Michael Jordan with just his left hand. So, yeah. I'd say contrary to what has now become popular belief, Michael Jordan had a left hand. And I cannot believe we had to dig into the data to come to this conclusion.
I can't believe you had to dig into the data to come to that conclusion, because I can't believe they got you that mad to the point where you really went out of your way to do that. We not done with the 80s and 90s.
The overall idea that the
we done with the 80s.
Were far less skill time
we done with the 80s
compared to today is probably fair. I mean, you'd be crazy to think the game hasn't evolved in 4 decades. But to say the league was trash back then is just wrong. I think more than anything, it's the style of play and the way basketball games would unfold back then that really throws some fans off when they go to watch film of these old games. It's like looking at a box score from the mid-2000s and thinking everyone sucked because the games finished with final scores in the 80s. But the players weren't bad, it was just a different game back then. It was slower, more methodical, more team and scheme-based than it is today. And similarly, I think you could say the 80s and 90s had its fair share of bad basketball. But that doesn't mean all the players were bad, especially the superstars of those eras. That was just the state of the game they were playing in. I think some older fans have a skewed perception of how good the game was back then, but I also think they just genuinely liked that style of ball regardless of the evolution of the league. In 20 years, there could be a dozen players around the league that shoot like Steph Curry, but I doubt
there's already a bunch of them that do.
Appreciation and affinity for those
not
players
just like them, but they have shot tendencies like
Steph
Steph Curry. Like all they want to do is just shoot threes.
Good old days. In the 90s, no one looked back at how the league was in the 60s claiming it was better. And so realistically, we shouldn't be looking back at the 80s and 90s claiming the league was superior than it is today, or even just as good for that matter. A lot of these ideas that favor modern basketball are becoming more mainstream as fans dive deeper into these topics and add context to narratives that have been floating around for decades. But I think this push to be done with the 80s and 90s is a bit overkill. We want to add context and nuance and knowledge to these discussions, not remove entire decades from it altogether. Sadly, I don't think any of this has or will change anyone's mind. This revolt against old school ball was either confirmation of what you already thought, Or this entire discussion is just blasphemy to you? Are we done with the 80s and 90s? Maybe.
The 80s,
but
yes.
For the sake of the game and the greats that paved the way, I sure hope not.
Okay, we're done with the video. Now let me put my 2 cents in. Okay, let me put the camera over here a little bit. Let me move you over here a little bit. Okay, let me just, you know what I'm saying, yeah. Let me do my Hold on, let me make sure my camera's good. Let me make sure we're Gucci. Okay, let me put my 2 cents in. Okay, hold up. All right, now, what Jimmy High Roller said is 100% right. Niggas don't be going back into the 60s and 70s and be saying that era was fire. So we shouldn't be going back and saying, and so the niggas that were watching basketball in the 80s and 90s shouldn't go back into our era or go in our era and saying that their era was good, because niggas wasn't doing that in the 70s and 80s, you know what I'm saying, or the 60s and 70s, for the 60s and 70s niggas. So, but when I say that I'm done with the 80s, I say that I'm done with the 80s. Now, before I explain this, let me acknowledge that there were some great players that played in the 80s, okay? I'm not going to say Michael Jordan got drafted in the 80s. Clyde Drexler got drafted in the 80s. Hakeem Olajuwon got drafted in the 80s. A lot of players got drafted in the 80s that ended up going into the 90s and becoming all-time greats, you know what I'm saying? Becoming motherfucking staples in the league. So I'm not going to sit here and ignore that the 80s, you know what I'm saying, had talent. My point is, bro, from 1980 up to like 1987, 88, the league was not fun. In my opinion, it was not fun to watch. The only teams that were fun to watch were the Los Angeles Lakers, the Boston Celtics, and the Philadelphia 76ers, because Julius Erving still was over there doing crazy ass dunks and layups for that time. Now you look at the dunks and it's like, bro, niggas be doing that shit in game. But for that time, niggas never saw dunks like that. So he was like, you know what I'm saying, the best dunker for that time. And you had Moses Malone grabbing like 20 goddamn offensive rebounds. So it was like, you know what I'm saying, he was a dominant motherfucker for that era. Larry Bird is Larry Bird. He can do everything on the floor, you know what I'm saying? Same with Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson he literally transcended the point guard position. He's the reason why motherfuckers play the point guard position how they play it now, because of him. So it's like, I'm not going to sit here and say that these motherfuckers suck. You know what I'm saying? George Gervin was still in the league. Like, I'm not going to sit and say that, but I'm saying majority of the teams that at that time were not good teams. The Phoenix Suns were trash. The Cavaliers were trash, okay? The Los Angeles Clippers were trash. The Dallas Mavericks were trash. The San Antonio Spurs were trash when they got rid of George Gervin. The Atlanta Hawks were trash, okay? The Houston Rockets, they were trash until they got Hakeem Olajuwon. Then they had the little Twin Towers thing going on for a few years. Then Ralph Sampson wanted to do blow. So they were trash. The Portland Trailblazers, they're trash until the you know what I'm saying, like the mid to late 80s, you know what I'm saying, like going into the 90s, they weren't that good until going into the late 90s, you know what I'm saying, or not late 90s, early 90s, you know what I'm saying. Majority of the teams at that time after the merger were bad. They were not good teams. You know what I'm saying? And that's no disrespect to them. That's just how it was at that time. Motherfuckers weren't practicing. Niggas was doing drugs. Niggas was over here niggas was not going to practice. Niggas was not trying to work on their game. Niggas just wanted to get their paycheck, go home, take care of their kids, and then occasionally do some blow on the side for some players. You know what I'm saying? Also, you got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He wasn't trash. He's one of the greatest players of all time. You know what I'm saying? But in that era, there was only a small few players that were actually working on their game. Like Magic Johnson, when he was called Tragic Johnson for missing free throws in the clutch, he went into the locker room, went into the gym, and worked on his free throws. Larry Bird, when he got that fucking when he missed the fucking wide open three to win the game, to win the game in the finals. I think it was the finals or was it the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm not sure, but it was one of those shots. He missed a wide open fucking three to win a game. And then he ended up losing at the end. So, you know what I'm saying? And he went into the gym and worked on that fucking three. And then he got his percentage up from that corner, from that side specifically. You know what I'm saying? So there were players at that time that were working on their game that were you know what I'm saying, that were nice, that if you put them in today's league or in the 2000s, the 2010s, that they'll be okay. They'll be able to, you know what I'm saying, probably not dominate like how they did in the 80s, but they'll definitely be able to hang around and definitely be able to, you know what I'm saying, make some teams, you know what I'm saying, win some finals, win some championships. But majority of the players in the 80s, that's not the case. Like, there's a lot of niggas in the 80s that you can look at. You could look at a spreadsheet of every roster and you can pick like 5 to 6 niggas from each roster that if you put them in today's era, they're not fucking, bro, they're done. They're probably not even going to make a fucking roster. Okay. The 90s, you can't say that. The 90s at that time, like I said earlier, almost every team at that time had a solid roster. Not every team was making the fucking playoffs, but every team was solid. Even the New Jersey Nets at that time was solid. The Phoenix Suns were solid. Until, you know what I'm saying, until they got Charles Barkley, you know what I'm saying, Charles Barkley turned them into a finals contender. You know what I'm saying? The Magic were a good team. The Heat were okay, you know what I'm saying? They were okay until, you know what I'm saying, they had Alonzo. Until when they got Alonzo more than they got Tim Hardaway Jr., that's when they became nice. You know what I'm saying? The Heat were okay. The Dallas Mavericks were ass in the 90s. I'm not gonna lie, them niggas sucked. The Bulls, they were fucking the Chicago Bulls. They're championships. They're champions. The Detroit Pistons, they were ass until when Isaiah Thomas got rid of them niggas. You know what I'm saying? But, you know what I'm saying, you also got teams like the Seattle Supersonics. You also got teams like the motherfucking Indiana Pacers. You got the motherfucking New York Knicks. Like, come on, bro. Like, you got other teams in the league that you could pick that whole roster. You could probably take that whole squad and put them in today's league, and they'll fuck around and make a play-in. Or fuck around and clinch a spot, you know what I'm saying, with the way they played. That's how the 90s was. You can't really do that with the 80s. That's me personally why I say the 80s was, we might be done with the 80s, you know what I'm saying? So niggas that be saying that they done with the 80s, I agree. You know what I'm saying? I agree 100%. We might be done with the 80s. But the 90s, we not. If you over here saying we done with the 90s, then you disrespecting a lot of niggas. Because there's a lot of niggas that were drafted in the 90s that played in the 2000s that niggas look up to. That niggas that are probably your favorite player, they played against them niggas. So you can't sit here and say we done with the 90s when you over here. You can't say you done with the 90s. If you can't sit here and say you done with the 90s if Kobe Bryant is in your top 5. You can't. You can't say, because then you saying you done with Kobe Bryant. You know what I'm saying? You can't do that. So with that being said, the video's over. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna try to get this video out as soon as possible. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out. Peace.